Hello, I'm Araba Chintoh, and I am a physician and a researcher based in Toronto, Canada. And I'll spend the next few minutes giving an overview of some of the practical principles to guide decision making when it comes to addressing the complex area of inclusion of transgender girls and women in the category of women's sport. Um, but I think I'm first going to take a few minutes to introduce myself and situate myself in this space for those who are watching and listening. Um, I'm known to many as Rue, or I guess, since becoming a proper doctor, Dr. Rue, and hopefully over the course of the week in Auckland, I'll get to know some of you personally as well. I am a Canadian rugby union player and had the honor of representing Canada at the highest level. And through being a player and after retirement and continuing on in leadership roles, I was honored to be one of the World Rugby Women's Leadership Scholars. And it's through that connection that I was asked to chair the working group at World Rugby to determine the most current set of guidelines regarding transgender players in rugby. And while we don't have time to get into the World Rugby guidance, I will use examples from that process to help illustrate what I learned about making hard decisions that impact equity-seeking groups. I am also a clinician scientist, so I am a psychiatrist. I see patients in our schizophrenia division, so patients with severe and persistent mental illness. I have a long history of research in brain science, neuroscience, psychopharmacology, and physiology. So I spent about, 24 years in post-secondary education before becoming a proper doctor, as they say. But for those who are interested in learning about why World Rugby's group took the decision that they did, you'll find a link to the process and the summary of the process here, as well as links to all of the presentations that our working group heard. In addition, there is a fully referenced guideline and a frequently asked questions document that's aimed at the lay audience, and that's also available on the website here. And as always, I put my hand up to have the one-on-one conversations with anyone from around the world to hear your perspectives and to answer any questions. And so a lot of people contact me through World Rugby, but that's my personal email there. So the baseline premise before we kind of go into what some of these steps are is that women's sport is a closed category. Similar to the way that in Paralympics there are closed categories to ensure fairness, or in boxing there are kind of closed weight categories to ensure both fairness and safety. Women's sport is essentially a closed category because the differences in biological sex, not gender, impact performance. And I put up a little logo of the International Olympic Committee here because throughout the process that World Rugby was going through, we were in conversation with the International Olympic Committee. And this is the document that most of you will know who are interested in this area, will know as the document that came out from 2015 that many of the sports were following with respect to how they included transgender athletes in their sport. And so this piece around the women's category being a closed category was something that came up. So many of these issues we dug down into to really understand, is this premise important for our sport? And when it came down to understand that the women's category is by its nature closed to others because of this performance-based advantage, we asked the International Olympic Committee, is this something we are looking at changing? Do we need to go back to first principles and say, do we still want to separate categories in sport on these two domains, male and female? And they came back and said that maintaining and continuing women's sport was something that was important. And so that is our baseline premise here. And you'll see here in 2015 that they speak a little bit about the importance of that women's category and some of the features that they thought were important in maintaining the fairness in that category. And so step one, get the right people in the room. At World Rugby, we spent a lot of time at this step understanding what the various domains were that were going to be important to us to help us make an informed decision around this. We identified socio-ethical issues, legal issues, medical issues, and scientific issues. And what we did was bring people together from each of these domains: players, social justice groups, ethicists, human rights lawyers, risk management and personal injury lawyers, insurance providers. In the medical domain, I've highlighted here WPATH because that's the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And wherever you are in the world, if you are trying to get individuals who are knowledgeable about this space, the WPATH is where to connect. Anti-doping also becomes important because of the role of testosterone. And then the scientific piece was also important. Questions around biology, physiology, and sports science. And so we brought all of these experts to the room, as well. Our working group that was making a decision around this guideline also contained experts in each of these areas, both from within World Rugby as well as independents. And I put up this photo not only because I like to look at photographs of myself, but because the importance of step 2, and that's around transparency. Everything that we did, we published. Each of these individuals here are part of the experts and the working group that came to this world first forum workshop where we brought together people on both sides of the argument to hear out what the evidence was saying. I look at this photo with a little bit of wryness and a little bit of pain because everyone has their smiles on here, but the tensions in the room were heated, and it was the greatest test of my strength as a mediator, as a leader, to be in that room and to keep the conversation civil and to keep the conversation going. And for those of you who are doing the same, transparency is important because so many of these processes have been hidden before, and strength is also important. Step 3, identify your values. Evidence versus emotion, human rights versus fair play, gender versus biology. Does safety matter? Rugby is the only sport in the Olympics that is a collision sport. And so safety was a big important piece for us. We whittled it down to the 3 values that will likely be applicable to many of you, although maybe not the only 3. Fairness, inclusion, and safety. And step 4 is around determining if those values can be balanced or if they must be ranked. And in our situation, we couldn't balance all 3 of those. And when we took the decision to our executive committee, they came back to us and said safety must be paramount. And so that helped us follow along the rest of our decision. Step 5, respect the diversity of jurisdiction. Many of you will be from your world governing bodies, and each jurisdiction in the world has different legislation around how they prioritize some of those pieces: inclusion, safety, fairness. And you have to be able to respect each jurisdiction being individual in those areas. So if you are making a decision for your governing body, also allow for there to be variations depending on each individual's legal situation. And finally, step 6 is to obtain stakeholder input. When you make a decision, get input from others. We had thousands of pages of correspondence after we made our decision. You must be strong in that your process is sensible and thought out and transparent. You must be kind when hearing communications back from others, and you must be humble to acknowledge that some of the decisions need to be revisited, some of the decisions are difficult. Continue to be dynamic and be nimble, and good luck.